success in life and a contributor to society, and I love George. But at age 18, because of his choices, George's story was over. I was determined not to make that mistake. That year, at age 10, I opened my own candy business out of the den of our home, putting the corner liquor store out of the candy business in the process, because my store was closer to the route that kids took to school. Location, location, location. I started down a path of entrepreneurship I remain on today. But more important, I began to learn to think for myself, a skill that would prove difficult to master. I learned that people who think for themselves are much less likely to fall victim to the likes of tweet or other predatory forces. In the poor neighborhood where I was raised, like in so many communities in this country, petty thugs preyed on individuals, but white-collar criminals in fancy suits also preyed on poor people's ignorance. Individuals with a low level of basic financial knowledge were and continue to be easy targets for what I call bad capitalism. For example, during the recent subprime lending boom, poor people making $25,000 a year were lured by unscrupulous brokers and lenders into taking out $500,000 loans with low initial teaser rates that reset much higher to levels they could not afford. At one point, my own family lost our own home to a predatory lender. In inner cities today, you'll often find a liquor store right next to a check casher, next to a pawn shop, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a payday lender. If misery loves company, then this is a pile-on. There's simply a superabundance of predatory businesses, and many people have lost hope. They are poor in spirit. They're not skeptical, they're cynical. They have low self-esteem and negative role models. Their get up and go has got up and went. So they go to the check cashing service to forfeit their today and go to the payday lender to forfeit their tomorrow. And because they don't believe that they'll have a tomorrow, they go to the liquor store to forget about their yesterday. In these communities, poor people spend roughly $10 billion a year on what I call ghettoized financial services. High interest and high fee check cashing, payday loans, refund anticipation loans, title lending, rent-to-own stores, and the like. I know of one individual who got a payday loan for $800. By the time he finished paying it off 6 years later, after rolling this payday loan over countless times, he had paid $15,000 in interest on an $800 loan. These businesses are in many cases short-term oriented, purely transactional business models that add little value and even deteriorate the customer base they purport to serve. These businesses are ultimately led by one thing: fear. People are afraid to lift themselves up, to lead themselves out of their situation, to think for themselves. Bad capitalism preys mercilessly on these fears. Throughout my journey from the inner city to my work as a social entrepreneur and a businessman, I've had a front row seat for witnessing how fear destroys a community. But I would learn that there is another way to lead and another way to live and to do business. It would take almost 30 years for me to understand that the antidote to fear is love. Discovering love leadership. In September 2007, I had come to Dalian, China, for the annual meeting of the New Champions, a generation of companies, primarily from rapidly growing emerging markets in Asia, that will fundamentally change the global competitive landscape. The meeting was sponsored by the World Economic Forum, an international organization committing to improving the state of the world, which is best known for its annual meeting of global leaders in Davos, Switzerland. I arrived in Dalian 4 days early to meet with my fellow members of the Forum of Young Global Leaders, the subset of the World Economic Forum composed of more than 800 young leaders in their 40s or younger who are recognized as rising stars in business, politics, and society. We were grappling with what made us different from others at the forum and what our purpose was. It was just after the Young Global Leaders, YGL, meeting that I entered the mammoth new glass and steel conference center, which had been built specifically for the World Economic Forum's meeting on top of a landfill in what had previously been a poor neighborhood. At that moment, I realized